On today's episode of the podcast, we continue my special interview series with 5 Masters of Wine. In part 2 of 5, today we feature Richard Ballantyne, MW. He is an Italian wine specialist and runs Noble Grape Wine Shop. He kicks things off by discussing his origins in the wine trade, talks in-shop tastings and makes an Italian wine deep dive. We have a discussion about natural wine, talk about the various opportunities and routes to becoming an MW, and he looks ahead to the future. Enjoy.
I was born in 72. My father started a wine business on his own when he was made redundant in 1978. So since I was 6 years old, all I've really known is the wine business. So all our holidays as kids were to wine regions, but in 1978 it was more likely to be Muscadet than Marlborough. So it was a bit of a fun as a kid. I really enjoyed it. It was fascinating. So I originally went to a polytechnic and studied engineering, but I was kind of kidding myself. I knew I was always going to come to wine. So in 1991, I joined my father's business, and that went along very well for 20 years. We did very well, but we started to run out of cash. So we went our separate ways, and I got a job with, first of all, with Matthew Clark. I was their wine development specialist for London. And then I spent about a year and a bit with them. And then after that, I joined Armit Wines. Spent 4 years there, selling to the good retailers of the country. And following that, I spent a year and a bit with my old mentor, Nick Belfridge, in exporting Italian wines to the UK. Basically, we were looking after about 120 different wineries from Italy. And amongst all of that, I remember, I think it was 2006, I just happened to come across the 2006 Masters of Wine exam paper. And in my, what was probably then a little bit of hubris, thought, I could do this. So the year later I applied for it and set off on my journey for Master of Wine. So that really started in earnest in 2008. And it was great fun. I learned loads. We met some great people. Went to some great wine regions, and when you are a Master of Wine student as well, you kind of get access that you wouldn't get as Joe Blogs. So I learned a great deal. And during that 2 years study, I kind of really developed my passion for Italian wines, because you're kind of building up to what your thesis is going to be, your third part of the exam, and I always struggled with that because I'm not a researcher, I'm a wine merchant. So I just chose my favourite wine, Barolo, and what should I do around Barolo? And I eventually picked on a topic that was looking at the single vineyards and seeing if there should be a classification of those, kind of in the style of Burgundy. That didn't work. Unfortunately, I did 2 versions of that, and neither of them got through. They thought it was good, but they didn't think it was quite good enough. So I went back to what I thought was my original idea, and rather than a topic around should they do a classification, I thought I'll do my classification and do it based on value. So let's value the land based on what the wines sell for. And actually that was the sweet spot, and I eventually passed with that version and became a Master of Wine in 2016.
Okay, so 2016 Master of Wine. Where to next? Fill in the sort of the last 3 years for us.
So I eventually passed in 2016, as I said, and at the time I was working for Venexus with Nicholas Belfridge, who is just one of the greats of the Italian wine scene. I mean, what Nick doesn't know about Italian wines is not worth knowing. But I kind of, I've always yearned to get back into running my own business again. And in 2017, a great opportunity came up in my hometown of a beautiful shop that was a former shoe shop. They wanted to move and create a new shop that had some changing rooms, so they wanted to do clothes, and I got in very early and snapped up this fantastic shop. So since October 17, I've been running my own business, and I'm still a one-man band, but that's fine. That's the way I like it. It means I don't get out to as many tastings as much as I used to, but that's fine. I taste a lot of wine at home. People send me samples. So it's good fun doing it that way, but it has its challenges. I'm still not through the stage yet of passing the sleepless nights. Still have those. But it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy running my own business and writing copy for my website and finding some fantastic wines to bring to my customers.
It is very interesting to me that you have gathered that experience, that you've worked for other importers and other businesses, and then you've brought it home, if you like, and wanted to do your own thing. So yeah, again, I just think it would be really interesting to kind of just to unpick a bit more the day-to-day then. You know, how does all of that experience and all of those qualifications and everything, how does it play out?
Well, I've kind of built up this great network of suppliers and producers that I've known for a very, very long time. And actually many of my suppliers are friends, people I've worked with as well. So this long experience, well, reasonably long, I mean, it's 28 years in April. So I built up this fantastic range of wines. So my mission is to... my mission is not to educate. My mission is, first of all, to sell wine, of course. But yes, to educate. And I do enjoy doing my masterclass tastings that I do in store. So I publish these tastings that I'm going to do. We have a small group of people that come along. I think I can cope with about 15, 16 people maximum, all seated in the shop, and we run through themed tastings. And I try to keep it... You've got to find the level of the room. You know, I can't talk about methoxypyrazines or Brettanomyces or things like that. Let's keep it nice and important. And what I think is very important, and what it really means to consumers, is that when you talk about a place and you talk about a person, you talk about grape variety, what does all of that mean in the glass? So that's really what I like to do, is it's all those intricacies and complexities of the world of wine, is what does that actually mean in the glass at the end of the day. And that's what I like to do. I like to bring that, all those different factors, you know, the climate, the weather, the grape variety, even, you know, hand picking or acidification, all these kind of things. How does that end up as being the style or the quality in the glass at the end of the day? And I think that's the really important thing for me. So I like to pick wines that really speak of where they come from or who they've made it. Actually, it's more important for me to speak of where they come from. So, for example, I really love Italian Cabernets, for example. Great wines, Sassicaia, fantastic wines. But what fires me up a lot more is Italian varieties and the authentic, what I call the authenticity of style. So I love wines that you can't find that kind of wine from anywhere else in the world. So I love Barolo is the thing that really fires me up. But also I love these old school Riojas. You know, I love Australian Shiraz, or it could even be a Marlborough Sauvignon. I like my Marlborough Sauvignons to taste a Marlborough Sauvignon, not to be a Sancerre copy. You know, that's the kind of thing that I really love. It could be a Chilean Merlot as well. You know, let's get a Chilean Merlot that really speaks of Chile. So I like to whittle my range down. And I don't have a huge range. I've got south of 400 wines. I don't like a lot of duplication. I like to find a wine, stick with it, and follow it. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of churn, but I like to really find interesting, fascinating wines that really have something to say about where they come from. So, for example, I'm not really big on natural wine. I know that's a really big, hot topic at the moment. But quite often I find with natural wines it says more about the person than it does actually about the origin. Now, I might be shot down in flames for saying that, but it's just the way I feel about it. So, that's my mission. That's what Noble Grape is all about, is finding these great authentic wines. And sometimes people are quite surprised, particularly people from the wine trade. They're really surprised to come into my store and find things like Villa Maria on the shelf. But hey, do you know what? It's the country's best-selling Sauvignon Blanc. People love it. It's a benchmark wine. Why would I not have it? You know, it'd be silly, almost silly of me not to have it. So I don't try not to have any dogma around these kind of things. Like, if I find a wine, I love it, great, it goes on the shelf, and let's work on the price and then make sure the price is absolutely bang on as well.
As I'll often say, that there's such a rich seam of things that I could ask you about based on that answer. But what I'd actually like to pick up on is where you kind of first went. It's always interesting to me when you've got so many ideas where you first go, which was around events and bringing people into the store, having those 15, 16 people there, and as I interpreted it, really was kind of you interpreting the wine and actually talking more and just communicating really about what all of those other things, all the other factors that surround the winemaking, how they kind of turn up in the glass. And I just wonder if you could maybe just give us an example of that. Is there maybe something that stands out from a recent tasting or from something that you're preparing where you kind of do that for us now, if that's okay?
Well, that's a good question, Lawrence. The last tasting I did back last month in February was my favourite topic. So I sometimes struggle now to find themes, because my tasting has always got to have a little theme, some kind of commonality. So the last tasting I did was Nebbiolo and Sangiovese. So we had 8 wines, and I thought, well, let's split it right down the middle. Let's have 4 and 4. So we had, when choosing the wines, I chose very carefully, apart from maybe one wine, which I wanted to show off a little bit. So when it comes to Nebbiolo, perhaps the greatest exponent in the world of Nebbiolo is Gaia. So I wanted to show my clients Gaia. And we showed the 2015 Barbaresco, which for me is great because I'm very used to tasting young wine. I cut my teeth in tasting young Burgundies and Bordeaux from the barrel. So tasting a very young, embryonic, if you like, Barbaresco is fine for me. I can assess the tannins, but unfortunately, in front of customers who drink great wine on a regular basis, I'm not used to drinking great wine so young. And it was a remarkably stubborn, backward wine. I was trying to... So my mission again was to try and talk people through it, not to tell them just what I think, but let them make up their own mind about this wine. And whilst I loved it, people could see the greatness of the wine, but they didn't quite understand what it was giving, because it wasn't really giving a lot. But then if you were to compare that to another wine that I showed, was the Quechabella Chianti Classico, 2015 also, wonderful, wonderful wine, but 1/10 of the price nearly. Everybody loved it. And it was just that drop-dead, gorgeous, brilliant wine that people loved. And after these events, I don't really expect a lot of sales, because they've come along here to hear me talk and taste some beautiful wines, of course. It's not a sales event, but we actually sold quite a few bottles of that on the back of that. So it was great just to, I find it really exciting that people, a lot of them are my generation, maybe some a little bit older, maybe some a little bit younger, who haven't really been exposed to Italian wines. They know French stuff, they know Spanish stuff, particularly in Wales. Spain is very, very strong. And New World, and Italy, which is the largest producer of wine in the world, tends to get forgotten about. So I don't see myself as a missionary, but I do like to bring Italian wine to people, and actually, picking my favourites and trying to get people to love them, is a great thing for me. But we had some fantastic wines that night. So the next one I have planned is a bit of a strange one for me. I'm going to do Classic Australia. So my idea behind this tasting is that I want to bring together a collection of 8 wines. I do 8 wines maximum. I think that's enough for about an hour and a half. That's, I think, all you have people's attention for, is to bring together 8 wines which represent the best of Australia when it first arrived here. So the real classics, like maybe some Hunter Valley Semillon and some Barossa Shiraz, some Margaret River Chardonnay, Adelaide Hill Sauvignon Blanc, something like that. Without getting too specific into the wines, but the wines that really made Australia exciting in the mid-80s and maybe even the early 90s when they first hit the scene. So I want to bring a little bit of that excitement back and cut out all the commercial stuff. Just have a bit of fun and choose some amazing wines. So that's going to happen a little bit later on in the month. And I haven't really decided yet which wines I'm going to choose, but it'll be something amazing.
I guess one of my missions, which did evolve over time, was to give and present differing points of view. I'm probably known, or it's perhaps notable that I have given a lot of coverage to people who are potentially in the natural wine scene or are working in a low intervention way. So I would just really throw the door open to you to expand a bit more on the point you made earlier around natural wine and what you think it says about the terroir or doesn't say about the terroir, or says about the winemaker or doesn't say about the winemaker. I think it'd just be interesting to have that debate and have your words out there.
Well, thanks, Lawrence. I'm very happy to give you my thoughts on it. So I remember in the very early days, and I think my first experience of, let's call it natural wine, was Coulis de Serran from Savagnin, and probably the grandmaster himself of natural wines. And I remember I was very lucky. I had some great experience, some old vintages, things like the 69 Coulis de Serran, the 73, the 71. These were wonderful, wonderful wines. And actually, I remember one of the greatest white wines I ever tasted is a friend's 50th, another master of wine, and he pulled out a bottle of 86 Coulis de Serran. It was just incredible. But then I started to notice the vintages after that were going slightly wrong. I remember buying quite well the 95 Coulis de Serran and selling it to all my customers. And then a couple of years later, once they started putting corks, started getting some complaints. The problem was the wine was browning very quickly in the glass. We had some popping corks. We had all kinds of stuff that was going wrong with this 95 Coulis de Serran. And I think by then I'd already sold the 97 into clients as well, and exactly the same thing was happening there. And I did start to wonder, is there something that he's doing or not doing? That these wines just aren't surviving long enough for the wine to become drinkable. They were just basically oxidizing. So I started to scrutinize his practices, and I don't think it was the biodynamics. I really don't think it is that. I'm kind of all for biodynamics. I think it's a great idea. I've got 2 young boys. I don't want them to grow up with all their food and all their drinks being poisoned. But I'm kind of still quite cynical about this kind of low sulfur regime. And I think quite often the natural wine guys, I understand where they're coming from. It's a great movement. I think they're our conscience, if you like. I think it's a great movement, but I'm not absolutely sure that in having this low sulfur regime, it serves the wine. I think it serves somebody's I'm going to say whim, but that's quite a harsh thing to say about that. I wouldn't say whim. It serves somebody's mission and somebody's agenda more than it serves the wine. I'm not a great fan of orange wines. I remember the first one I was exposed to was Gravner from Friuli. I just didn't get it. I still struggle even now to understand the wines of Gravner. I think they are massively impressive wines. I just don't find them enjoying a great enjoyment to drink. I think because of these early experiences I have, I think I'm ever so slightly cynical. And actually, as it stands now, I don't have one single orange wine in my stock list. Not that I won't, but there's nothing that I've tasted that I'm yet to fall in love with. I think once I fall in love with something and I get it and I click, then yeah, that's great. But just as it stands, it's not really my mission to sell these kind of wines. And do you know what? Maybe it's something to do with being in the regions. I don't know, but the demand is just not there. Now I know I don't have them, but nobody's asking me about them. Maybe it's a generational thing, or maybe it's a regional thing where, hey, look, I'm not in Shoreditch. It's just not really the kind of thing that my customers are looking for. And personally, I'd rather sell them a great Chablis or a great Verdicchio than sell them something like that.
Sure. Okay. And I'm just curious then, I mean, you've given some specific examples of producers and vintages there, and I'm just curious if you've then almost looked into that, and if you're at a point and a place now where you have beyond, kind of almost moving beyond the term natural wine, you then would think, okay, it might be X. I mean, you mentioned sulfur already, but do you already have in your own mind a view of what are the things that they're doing or not doing, which it sounds as though it's kind of robbing you of some of the enjoyment of actually of the finished wine itself.
Well, I think one of the tenets, I may be wrong of this. One of the tenets of natural wine, particularly when it comes to white wines, is these orange wines which are macerated. Now, I'm not really against macerated wines. I mean, I cut my teeth in the old Vigna Tondonia White Riojas back in the early 90s, and I still love those wines, even though I can't get them. I still love these wines. So I'm not particularly against macerated white wines. I think sometimes it works. For me, quite a lot of cases, it doesn't work. So I think the maceration thing is one thing for me. I don't quite understand why you would do extended maceration on a white wine, so much so that it becomes this very strange colour and takes on these cidery characteristics. You know, I'm not. I don't have a trained palate. My palate is my palate, and if anything is verging on that kind of cidery quality, for me that's a flaw. The wine is flawed. Wine should taste the wine, and it should taste of the place. Sorry, I mentioned it before, but it should taste the place, not necessarily taste of the man. Yeah, you should taste the grape variety, and yes, you should taste some personality in there. But first and foremost, it's got to taste of the dirt. It's got to taste of where it comes from. You know, I haven't travelled extensively throughout the wine world, but I love going to wine regions, and the thing that really excites me is finding a new producer. Well, I'll give you an example. I was doing a presentation on Calabrian wines last year, back in November, which was a daunting thought, because not only is Calabria, well, it's part of Italy, of course. Not only is Calabria slightly off my radar, it's a very small region in terms of wine, but I was presenting it to Calabrians. Now that was a terrifying thought. So I had to obviously gen up on my wines, and before the tasting, before I did the presentation. Unfortunately, I didn't really get much of an opportunity to try the wines in advance. But as it happened, I attended a very quick tasting beforehand, and one of the wines was poured for me. As soon as I saw it hit the glass, I thought, I'm going to like this. I am going to like this wine. I just saw the colour. I saw that beautiful ruby garnety colour. It looked like a 10-year-old Barolo, but I knew this wasn't Barolo. This was Giro from Calabria. And that wine just absolutely blew me away. Now, this wine could possibly have been sold as a natural wine, because there was no sulfur regime. It was, very long maceration for a red wine. It was 60 days or whatever it was, and then it was aged for 4 years in cement tanks. So this guy could be described as a natural winemaker. But the wine was just spectacular. And for me, the fact that it was natural was neither here nor there. It was the fact that it was just an incredible, incredible wine. And I've made it my mission now to find a way of getting this wine into my store, which is going to be slightly difficult. Calabria is a long, long way away. It's very difficult to ship from. And the guy's only got 1 hectare, and it's vines planted in 1948, so he's got this tiny little vineyard. But it's something, that wine incredibly, incredibly excited me. But it was because of just looking into the wine and seeing the guy's personality in there as well. The fact that it was natural had absolutely nothing to do with it. It was just an experience. And I'd probably go as far to say it's the most amazing wine that I've had that I've never heard about before. That sounds slightly arrogant, I'm sorry, but this guy was not even on my radar. I had never heard of him, and it just absolutely blew me away. So I'm going to find a way to get his wine into my store.
It's super interesting, because I think the debate will sort of go on and on, because really in this in the same conversation, you've made a statement and then you qualified it. You've spoken about long maceration and those wines not necessarily being to your taste, but then also coming across a wine that was just a good wine, in spite of the fact that it could be termed a natural or a low intervention, or almost the nomenclature didn't matter. It was just a good wine, I do believe I'm in the same place, and I think that's why I'm very happy and open to having these discussions, because I don't only drink natural wine. I don't only drink low intervention wine. I probably mostly drink those wines, I would say. But if I seek out those wines and they're not good, then I won't enjoy them. I don't enjoy the label or the category first. I enjoy the wine first, and I think that's important not to lose sight of. I'm also keen to ask a bit of a broader question to kind of, in a sense, take you out of the shop, if we might, and just ask, has the fact that you are an MW, and I guess you are showing up on so many more people's radars now, what other sorts of opportunities has that, and does it open up to you? And how do you sort of manage those in terms of your first love and your first passion, which is the shop and the tastings that you're doing?
Well, actually, as it happens, being stuck out a little bit in Wales, sorry, it's not Mars, it's just Wales, means that I think the opportunities, particularly for a very new MW like me, because we are enrolled into the education program, we're kind of paying back because we've been taught ourselves. So I haven't actually had the opportunity yet to take part in any of the residential seminars or a kind of formal part of the education program. Yes, I have students. I have 4 at the moment. So that's me kind of paying back. But what I was kind of hoping was that when I wrote my dissertation or my research paper on Barolo, I was going to be the go-to man for Barolo. It's starting to happen little bit by little bit. So I am asked to do seminars now on Italian wines, which I'm very happy to do. That's great. Gives me a little bit of exposure, and I actually love talking about my favourite topic anyway. So things like that. Do I see my name in lights? No, not quite yet. No, not quite at that stage. Unfortunately, I'm not that I'm hiding my light under a bushel, but I don't think I'm exposed to the same stuff that maybe the London or New York or Hong Kong MWs are. Certainly not in little old Cowbridge.
It's always very interesting to me to hear the terms that people use, and I'm just, kind of a follow-up question really. What does it mean, so having qualified in 2016, to still be a new MW, and what does that sort of mean in terms of, 2016 to now, and when will you think you feel like an old MW?
Well, that's a good question, Lawrence. I think I'll probably know the answer to that when I get there. But when I started in 2008, I don't know if it's still the same thing you have to do, but you have to get an MW to vouch for you to make sure that you're ready for the program. And I didn't get one; I got 2 to do it for me. And one of them I got to vouch for me was Nicholas Belfridge, and Nick passed in 1980. So I kind of see Nick as one of the great old MWs, and I'm absolutely convinced Nick has forgotten more than I know. So I'm a long way off from having his expertise. And I used to, as a customer of Nick's actually, and when we used to walking around Vinitaly, Nick used to introduce me to all his Italian producers, and just walking around this huge big wine fair, just the reverence and the people had towards Nick. They wanted to shake his hand and they recognise him. I'm so not near that level yet. I'm quite a long way off. But I'll kind of know when that happens. But coming up to 2.25 years, 2.5 years now, I still do feel quite new. I mean, I was actually my official number is 397, but when I passed, there were 354 of us. I think there's now 388. I think something like that. So the rate of new NWs that's coming through seems to be coming through a lot quicker. I remember one year there was only one chap that passed. In my year there was 18 of us that graduated. So even though I'm 46 and I was 44 when I passed, I actually feel quite old. So the guys that are coming through now, they're guys who have done the university route and then they've done the diploma and they cut their teeth for a couple of years in the wine business and then jump straight into MW, when I was actually 17 years in the business before I even embarked on it. Because I think, not to denigrate what these guys do, but I kind of think if you're going to be a master of anything, I think kind of feel you have to be around for a little bit of a while before you even do that. But so hats off to these guys who go straight from diploma into masters. Obviously they're very learned people, very clever, can write great essays, and are able to analyse stuff very well. Hats off to them, but I kind of feel I wasn't at that level until I'd reached a certain age.
What I always like to do is just encourage you to look ahead, really. So be that with what you're developing in the shop, be that looking ahead to what you're doing with your MW students, I guess you'd call them. What have you got coming up that you're looking forward to?
Well, the big focus for me over the next 6 months is for me to be able to free myself up from the day-to-day running of the business and actually really work quite well and get on my website. Absolutely brilliant, full of fantastic content and great write-ups and maybe some producer interviews, that kind of thing. Just make the website just a bit more, less just a selling tool, but almost like a community for my wines as well. So that's one thing I really want to do, really progress that. But the second thing is to be able to free myself up from the day-to-day, is to actually start tackling the trade again, because I love selling to restaurants. I find it great fun. Unfortunately, in the last couple of jobs that I had, I was doing such a great deal of mileage that it took its toll on me. But I really want to get back into selling to restaurants again, and I think that's going to be the focus for me. Perhaps not this year, but the following year. Let's get through Brexit. Let's see what the fallout from that is. I'm sure we'll survive. We'll still be getting wine. I'm absolutely convinced of it. But I'm not quite, because I'm still quite a new business, not quite financially strong yet to be able to give months and months of credit. So once I've built a really good financial solid base in the business, then I can actually go out there and start tackling that restaurant business. It's going to be a big thing for me. So I will be an employer again, so I'm looking forward to that, and get some decent young guy or gal to run the shop for me, and just basically take the noble great message to the world. Yes.
Thank you so much, Richard. It was fantastic to meet you. As I mentioned on the podcast, I'm very happy to represent differing points of view on the show. So do please pick up the discussion points with Richard or with myself. All of the contact details for Noble Grape can be found below. And of course, do please follow along with me. I'm at Interpreting Wine on Instagram and Facebook, at Wine Podcast on Twitter, and email hello@interpretingwine.com. We continue this special 5-part series next time in episode 252 with David Ferrer, MW. See you then.